Welcome to Hochoka Podcast.
To some, Gertrude Simmons Bonin, who chose the pen name Zikala Shah, might be a study in contradictions. How did the woman who authored Why I Am a Pagan also embrace Catholicism? Who better to help us explore the topic than Dr. Damian Costello? Hello, Medaki and welcome to Hochoka, here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School's campus. I'm Scott Wooster, your Hochoka host. We're glad you have joined our circle with frequent guest Dr. Damian Costello, who specializes in the intersection of Catholic theology, indigenous spiritual traditions, and colonial history. Welcome, Damian.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be back.
Absolutely. So, we're going to talk today a little bit about, as I said in the header, Zikala Shah. And we've talked a little bit about her history in other episodes. We've thought it might be good to circle back a little bit to a part that I overlooked certainly, and I think you might have overlooked as well, but the fact that she was Catholic. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I had no idea that she was Catholic. It wasn't until these previous episodes came up that I even started to look more into her life, and that was a small detail that jumped out, not surprisingly, to me. Mm-hmm. I mostly knew her or about her from her very powerful essay, Why I Am a Pagan. Mm-hmm. And right, that title just sort of jumps out off the page, and I read that probably 15, 20 years ago, and it gets into this question that I think every kid that's ever had to go to church asks: why do I need to go to church to connect with the Creator? Mm-hmm. And she frames this beautifully with a walk by the Missouri River, and sort of teases that out.
Yeah, and she's Yankton Sioux, probably grew up downriver from here, on that reservation down there, I would assume, and lived near close by the river and was surrounded by nature at that point in her life. Yeah, and I have not read Why I Am a Pagan, but I will say I had that same conversation with my mom every Sunday morning at about 9:30 before 10 o'clock Mass about why do I need to go to church with you to get closer to the Creator? And she answered it every week by saying, get in the car, let's go. And so let's tease that out today. Let's see if we can figure out what we need to know about that.
Well, I'd have to admit that that's a question that often came up to me too. Mm-hmm. Maybe not every Sunday, and maybe not quite as strong, but I've had incredibly powerful experiences of being on the land and connecting to the Creator that way. Mm-hmm. And so Zikala Shah starts her essay. She's walking down the river, and she so beautifully describes all the different details of what that experience is like, and particularly the different beings that are part of it, the flowers, the yellow breast, a particular bird. And she talks about her spirit and her heart just sort of being inflamed. You probably got this from the previous episodes, that she was an incredibly passionate person, very alive, and a very, very distinct writing voice. A scholar I was listening to said she's really the first indigenous writer in North America who has her sort of own voice. She's not been translated by somebody else, and she's writing both in English and Dakota, and she just brings that whole experience alive and repeats over and over that beautiful teaching, which, of course, we've talked about a lot, and we say a lot, Mitaku Eyase, all are relatives, all are related, that this feeling of kinship with all the beings around her are fully alive in that moment outside in creation.
I totally relate to what she's talking about, absolutely. Walking along the Missouri, living here by the river as we do, the studio that we're sitting in is right next to the river. We've got, the trees that are native to this area. Our sweat lodge is on the river. My house is along the river. And for me, that's my connection point. And I probably overstated my childhood and how intense that would have been. I did find the connection in the church and in my CCD classes and in the Bible and all those things. I found it in so many different places. I find it interesting, just for our audience, maybe she refers to pagan, and it it has different connotations for different people. I think the way we're using it is such a positive connotation, walking on the land in harmony with everything there is. Can you just unpack that in the
Sure.
briefest way you can?
Yeah, I think you brought this up, that what she means is traditional Nakota Dakota spirituality.
Okay.
Right, the traditional ways. The word pagan was really a weapon used by Christians to sort of demonize those traditions. And so Zikala Shah is very good rhetorically. Like, she knows how to talk to her audience. She's sort of like taunting her readers that, no, not only am I traditional, I'm willingly embracing what you dismiss as paganism.
Yeah.
Right? But for her, it has none of those negative connotations.
Right. Just and I love that because it brings out what I would imagine to be her spiritedness.
Yes.
You know, that piece of her that really I think would be fun and maybe a little mischievous and in a way that you have to be to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, you know, she was born in 1876, which was the Battle of Little Bighorn that year. And so she really has that spirit in terms of how she writes and how her activism that infused her whole life.
Yeah.
And so in the context of this essay and that activism, I think a lot of people would be surprised that not long after she wrote that, so this came out in December 1902, in 1909, she becomes Catholic. And like a lot of other Lakota Catholics, was not just some sort of, get your card stamped on Sunday Catholic.
Yeah.
She was very actively engaged in a public figure for a number of decades within the Lakota Catholic Church.
And I think you see that from time to time where that embrace could be just putting on the clothes to make it your way to get through the world, to a survival tool. But I hear, and it still exists today, where a lot of Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota have embraced it to the point where that's the life that they live. And for her to live that way so strongly, do you have any idea why that might be or what influenced that so much?
Yeah, I think what's really important is that that's when she moved to Fort Yates, Standing Rock Indian Reservation, with her husband. Her husband, he was born Catholic, though I don't know how intentional early in his life, but when they got to Fort Yates, they got connected with the Benedictine community there, and the Lakota Catholic community there, which from everything that I've heard and been told was a very vibrant place. We also have to remember that in Lakota context, these years were actually pretty vibrant. Once people started to make the adjustment to the reservation system, they were actually very successful. And then we see this particularly in Fool's Crow biography. He talks about that was actually sort of an idyllic period, that once we figured out this farming, ranching thing, we still had the old ways, we still sort of had our center. And before the Great Depression, before the Dust Bowl, before the boarding schools really started to have their major impact, that this was a good time. And so I think that's one part of it. The other part of it is that Lakota Catholic Church, and we talked about this here, is that there were problems, particularly its connection with the boarding schools. But the leadership, the non-native leadership, actually entered into Lakota ways pretty significantly compared to the rest of the white population. And they gave a relatively high amount of autonomy to native leaders like Black Elk. Right? A lot of these Catholic churches in the rural parts of the reservations were controlled by native people, by Lakota people, particularly traditionalists, people who were raised to be medicine men like Black Elk. And so they only stayed 6 months, but she was sort of unequivocal that I was completely converted, she says, by this relational spirituality.
Okay. Just being close to it, being around it. And then again, I'm struck, and I've said this before, about different times in history where we just missed it, where there was hope, and then it was passed by. And so you're talking about this time where I would have assumed that there was just absolute hopelessness, and saying that there was some hope at that point, and that, again, it may have slipped by and things changed and we lost it again.
Yeah. When you really dive into the history, you have both these very beautiful snapshots that are almost even more painful in that they don't last long sometimes, right? When you look back at what could have been, if you take out some of those ingredients, like you take out the corrupt reservation administration, you take out the Great Depression, that maybe this could have flowered into something much healthier and more beautiful for the people.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, we want to look back to that and say, what are those ingredients that we can maybe harness again in a fuller way?
Yeah, and that's kind of the point with her story, I think, for me and for you as well. What can we learn from her to be able to take the best of both and to move on from that? And actually, she is a person that was able to do that in 1909 or, basically around that time. Okay, so we're going to circle back a little bit because it's such... the juxtaposition is so strong. The ends of the spectrum, that piece of it, or seemingly on the surface, still seem to be that you have this woman who becomes a Lakota Catholic, very fervent Lakota Catholic, who started our talk with why I am a pagan, which sounds like a spirited woman who would never allow herself to go down that path, like a huge resistance.
So I think that very implicitly says something about the nature of Lakota Catholicism, that somebody who would be so committed to the ideals that she described for the sake of her, the audience she's writing to as paganism, which is really just the core of Lakota spirituality, that all are related, that either can live harmoniously with the teachings of the Catholic Church or is partially found within it. And I'll go to that second thing.
Yeah.
I think it's very much like the ghost dance. Now, the ghost dance was, the Messiah was going to come and bring the earth back to the way that it was before the colonists sort of destroyed it. And you had a certain lifestyle to live, certain songs and dances. And the leader of that, the Messiah who was going to accomplish this, was Wanikia, he who makes live. That didn't eradicate Lakota spirituality. That was just one more ceremony that was added into traditional Lakota ceremony. So traditional Lakota ceremony is that the people may live. That's why you have your ceremonies. And this new Messiah is going to make it all live again, sort of bring it back to new life. And I think that's what you see in her dual life as a Catholic and a traditional, someone with a traditional spirituality, that Catholicism embraces, it acknowledges the need for the kinship of all beings. And the center of it, Wanikia, that's the word that Lakota Catholics used, that he who makes live connects to that. It's not separate. It's just another resurrection on top of the power to make live.
Yeah, and I know it's so fascinating to me, and I know it's not, I don't want to oversimplify things or to have us oversimplify things, because I doubt it was that easy back in 1890 to assume that everybody was thinking in the same way and there weren't divisions and that type of thing. But you talk about the ghost dance, and my understanding too with that is that people were talking about, when you said the word Messiah, and people talked in terms of the word Jesus. Jesus is coming back as part of that, and a lot of indigenous people at the time embraced that, right?
They did, and it takes so much unpacking on our side because we're so used to the gospel story, Jesus being in the hands of the people who conquered. But for the natives of the time, the way they told the story is that Jesus came and the white people killed him. He's coming back as an Indian this time. What does that mean? Well, we can unpack that for a long time, but it basically means that he's not owned by the white people. He's the savior of all.
Right.
And we have the greatest need now in this situation.
Yeah, and I love that too in terms of what a Sundance leader that I know talked about with mending the hoop. You need to mend the hoop with all the colors that we have of all the races on Earth. It's not just done by one. I've said that before, but it always seems to speak to it's always a part of what we're talking about, I should say.
So I'm glad you brought up the Sundance, because I think this is the final thing to tie up before we end this conversation, is this whole question of, why do I go to church? And so I think Zikala Shah would be very comfortable with this sort of flipping this around, right?
Yep.
Then the question would be, you work with kids here and you bring them to sweat or other ceremonies. What would you say to a kid who says, "Oh, come on, Scott, why do I need to go to sweat? I can just go for a walk by the river and connect with all the Creator and all the beings around me"? What would you say to that?
Well, it's complicated, and it's a great question. It really is, because I think what I would say to them, number one, is, and this comes in terms, we just had a sweat last week, 7th and 8th grade boys, and I would tell them, don't worry about your girlfriend. Don't worry about your rec time. Don't worry about shooting buckets. Come to sweat. Make this a part of what you do. That's a whole different issue, though. But in terms of that great question there, for the guys that I work with, I think it intensifies that experience to be with other people. You're in a sacred place. You're in a ceremony that was given by the ancestors that just has so much weight. The rebirth of that, the cleansing of it, and it's the ceremony for me crystallizes all of that. So that would be my response, and I wouldn't couch it that way to a 13-year-old boy, but it crystallizes all that into, you come here, you're able to, you're a young man now, you give something yourself, and the people will gain something from that. The people you love will gain something, and the people in general. And yeah, you can get that walking along the river. You can get that sitting up on a hill. But there's something about ceremony, and I'm speaking from personal experience, that I drew from the ceremony that really crystallized everything for me.
I love that answer, because ceremony brings us together, and the ways that are given by our ancestors focus the power of the Creator into us and transform us.
Yeah.
Right? You can't have purification and you can't have rebirth in the same way on your own.
Yeah.
Without the people around you, without that darkness, without that heat, without the medicine, without the prayers, it doesn't happen in the same way. Ceremonies do something specific. They give you a power that you didn't have beforehand.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the same. Kala Shah would probably agree that in the Catholic context as well, these ancient ceremonies accomplish something. They have an effect on you.
Yeah.
And so you go to them not because you can't commune with the Creator and find kinship with everything around you. You go to them for something else.
Yeah.
That power to live again in a better way.
I just think it's a great conversation to talk about. We could sit here and talk about this forever. We're just getting started, but we have a couple of episodes where we can dig in again. I think that I don't have all the answers. I certainly don't, and I expect you to tell me the same about you. There's a great mystery out there, and whatever brings us closer to that is going to be worthwhile, and that's what ceremonies do for me. Anyway,
I can't say it any better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
So let's see what else we can say on the next one. I think that that's all we'll do for this one. We'll wrap it up. But thank you again for being here, and we'll talk soon. And we'd like to thank our audience for being here at Hochoka at the center of St. Joseph's Indian School's campus, where we talk about issues that are central to Native American education today. Until next time, stay centered.